Hey everyone, welcome back. Glad you can join me. I'm just having my morning coffee here. Today I'm going to show you how to code, test, visualize, and deploy trading strategies using Python and Freqtrade, an open source trading framework that is written in Python. So today I'm going to show you how to download historical data on multiple cryptocurrency pairs. We're going to code and backtest several different strategies from the Freqtrade strategy library. We're going to plot and visualize the results, take a look, see what trades it would have made, and then we'll do a dry run. So we'll test this with simulated money first, just to make sure we're comfortable and happy. And then I'll show you how to deploy this strategy to a server using Docker. So we set up Docker in the last video, and I'll show you how to package this all up and deploy it to a real server. So that way it can trade your real money in real time, and you can go to sleep and let it trade for months on end and see what happens. So let's go ahead and get started, shall we? So before we start looking at code and typing commands in the terminal, let's take a quick look at the end result. So this is Freqtrade deployed to a server. I've had this running with my own real money for over a couple weeks now. So this was deployed on June 29th, and today is July 14th. So it's running, 16 days now. And you can see the actual trades it made and the results of that. And you see that it's currently up 6%. So there's 600 and something dollars here. And I think I started with like 500 and something here. So no guarantee you'll get these type of results. If that's a good result to you, you decide. So this is just trading with a very small amount of money, just to show how this all works. And I wanted to make sure this could run for weeks on end without any major issues and without a lot of intervention. And so I haven't really checked on this at all. And so you can see this is probably the types of results you'll get from these short-term trading strategies that are in the Freqtrade trading library. You see there's many quick profits here. So a lot of these little short-term minute-by-minute trading strategies, they're designed to be like a scalping strategy where you just try to chop off a little bit of profit at a time. It's very hit and run type of thing that's going on here. And so what's going to happen here is you'll see a lot of different 1% returns here. So 1% take profit, return on investment, 1% take return on investment, and so forth. And then occasionally you'll see a larger, so I have a 10% stop loss here. And so you can see this exited due to a stop loss. And so there's 20 trades here. You can see there's 2 losers. And if I scroll through here, you see there's a whole string of winners in a row. So that's $1 at a time. But then you'll see by the time we got to, looks like it's done 48 trades here and 43 winners. And then you can see there was a string of big losers here with Chainlink, Ethereum, and Solana. And these all lost $10, right? And so this account was doing pretty well. And then there you go. You get some big losses that wipe out a lot of these small gains, right? So if I go over here to the documentation, you can see there's a section called Strategy Customization. It says how to develop your own strategy, right? And it says to get started, use Freqtrade new strategy, and you'd give it the name of a strategy. And so let's go ahead and try that. I'm gonna go to my terminal and I'm gonna do Freqtrade new strategy, just like that. And then I'm gonna give it a strategy name. And then I can call it PTL strategy. Just like that, and it says, oh, command not found Freqtrade. Now, why is that? I've already installed Freqtrade. I've brought it up in my last video. The Docker container is running. I can see my UI right here, so it's clearly installed and running. What's the difference here? Well, when I ran Freqtrade, this command, this is actually running on my Mac OS X here, right? And when we're running a Docker container, it's like we have a little container, a machine running that's kind of isolated from the rest of my operating system. And so the Freqtrade command, I don't have that installed locally. Now, some of you manually installed this and installed it directly to your local machine. I didn't do this, but if you have it installed locally, then you can type the Freqtrade command. But since I like to isolate all of my stuff inside of either Python virtual environments or Docker containers, then I have a separate isolated Docker container here. And so to show you exactly what I mean, if I type a Docker PS here, you can see all of the Docker containers that are running right now. And you see I have a container that's named Freqtrade, right? And so let me show you the difference. If I type uname-a here on Mac OS X, it'll say Darwin, Larry's MacBook Pro 2. And so I'm on my MacBook Pro here. But if I do something like this, docker exec -it, and I give it the name of my container, so Freqtrade, and then I type bash, I can actually get a shell terminal here for the Docker container. And if I type uname-a here, you can see I'm in a whole different world right now. I'm on a Linux machine. So it says Linux kit, blah, blah, blah. And you can see this is where I have my own isolated file system here, and I can go up, right? And you can see this is basically like an entire separate Linux machine right here. And if I type Freqtrade while I'm on here, all of a sudden I have a Freqtrade command and it says I need to pass it some subcommands. So if I run this on the container, then you'll actually see the Freqtrade command. And so in my documentation, it says I need to type Freqtrade new strategy and then give it a name. So just like that, we can copy this part and then we just give it the name of a strategy, and I'll call it a PTL strategy, just like that. And if I do that, it'll generate an example strategy, and you see it says writing strategy to Freqtrade user data, strategies, PTL strategy, just like that, right? And so if I do this and I go in user data, list that out, go into my strategies directory, and I'll clear this and list it, you'll see that I have a strategy file called ptlstrategy.py. I'm gonna go to Visual Studio Code now and open this up. And so this is running in my Docker container, but this file system actually gets mapped to my local machine. And so you can see I can edit this in Visual Studio Code just as I would any normal local code. And I can go to PTL strategy py right here. And so this is pretty nice. You can see I don't have to write all this boilerplate code. I don't need to import pandas and all these things I need. It's already imported. So I have pandas, pandas TA, this qtpylib, talib abstract, and I can use those right here in this class without typing all this. You can see it generates a class called PTL strategy that extends this iStrategy class that's part of Freqtrade. And then I just need to fill in all the details like the time frame I want to use, the minimal return on investment, my stop loss, my trailing stop loss, and any other settings. There's a whole bunch of different settings here. And so if you scroll down here, the three main functions you need to be concerned with are this Populate Indicators function, which accepts a data frame here. And so what you do is get this data frame of price data, and then you can run any numerical computations you want to run on it. Maybe you want to run a momentum indicator or any number of things you can do to it. And then you set any columns you want to set in the data frame. So you have your OHLCV data and then any extra data you want to append to that in this data frame. And then you have two more functions here that are called populate entry trend and populate exit trend. So there's lots of boilerplate code here that you can delete. And then you have this function populate entry trend, and you just populate whatever entry signal you want to populate here. So you code that in and you specify that in your pandas data frame, and then you populate your exit trend. So you say when you want to enter the trade and when you want to exit the trade, right? So there you go. We ran a single command. It generated a bunch of code for us that we can customize and make our own. So we have this strategy code here. So yeah, can we run it right now? What happens if I run it now? So I'm going to, what do I want to do with this strategy? Well, I don't want to trade it yet. I want to back test it to see how it performs. And so I'm in my container here and I can run Freqtrade and see all the different commands I can run here. So it says, let's see if I can help here. And you can see it has a variety of different commands I can run. And so this has a trade command. It has a download data command. It has a backtesting command, hyper-optimization command, and so forth. So let's go ahead and let's backtest this. Let's see what happens there. So I'm going to do a Freqtrade backtesting, just like that, and see what that does. It says no strategy is set. So I didn't give it the name of my strategy. So I need to do a backtesting. And then if I do a dash help like this, this will show me all the different parameters that I can pass in. And then in the documentation here, it's going to show you the actual parameters you need to pass in here. And so one thing with Freqtrade, there's a ton of command line usage here, and it's nice that you can generate all this stuff, but also you need to be familiar with 5 or 6 parameters here. So if you decide to use Freqtrade more and more in the future and you keep running these commands, you'll eventually commit most of the ones you need to memory. It's actually not that many, even though it looks like a ton of stuff is going on here. So Freqtrade backtesting is the first command. And so I do that, and then I need to give it the name of my strategy. And so if I scroll down here and it says testing your strategy, you need to pass it the name of your strategy. So I'm going to do dash strategy, and then I give PTL strategy, and that's the name of my strategy class. If I do this, it's going to run again, and here's what it says. What does it say? Validating configuration. It says using resolved pair list volume pair list from volume pair list.py. It says volume pair list is not allowed for backtesting. Use static pair list instead. And so what does that mean? So I'm going to go to my configuration here, config.json, and you'll see the pair list here. This is the list of different cryptocurrency pairs you want to trade. And what it does by default here is get the top 20 most traded pairs by volume here. And so that's the current method. In backtesting, you can't do that. You need to give it the names of some specific pairs. So you change the method here to say static pair list, and you need to give it a list of different pairs. So I changed this method to static pair list, and you see this white list here. I'm just going to give it a few different cryptocurrencies to trade. And so I'm on the FTX exchange right now. So if you look in exchange here, depending on your exchange, these will be named different things. I'm on the FTX exchange for this particular demo. I know a lot of people out there use Binance and KuCoin and Kraken and other exchanges. You need to look that up yourself. It's in the documentation. And so on the pair whitelist here, I just need to give a list of different pairs I want to trade. And so I'm going to say I want to trade the top few. So like Bitcoin USDT, ETH USDT, and Solana USDT, just like that. And then it will trade those particular pairs in my list, and it'll trade multiple pairs at a time concurrently. So if I do that, and right now, what does it say? I'm going to rerun my strategy, and it says no history for Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Solana. And it says use Freqtrade download data to download the data. And so now that I have these pairs in here, I can type Freqtrade download data, and it should download some data for me. And so it's going to use the FTX exchange or whatever exchange you have configured. And you should see it say that it's downloading the history to your local machine. And so you see it downloaded historical data, and here's the information here. And it says how many bars it downloaded. So it downloaded 8,640. You'll notice if I look in the data directory locally here, you'll see I have 1 minute data and 5 minute data for Bitcoin, 1 minute data and 5 minute data for Ethereum, and 1 minute data and 5 minute data for Solana here. And so these are basically cached locally. So it fetched them remotely and then it saved this JSON data locally. That way you can just load it from disk the next time I run it. I don't need to re-download it. And so we have these snapshots that we can run, right? And so I have this historical crypto data now, and now I can go back up and run my strategy again on this data that I downloaded, and we can see what happens. So it says optimizing, boom. Just like that, we ran our strategy, and it ran it against that historical data. You see by default, so let's analyze and look through this a little bit. I'm gonna make this a bit smaller so that it fits on the screen. So you can see here in my terminal, it shows a backtesting report, nicely formatted in different tables like this. You can see for all the different cryptocurrency pairs that I have, Solana, Bitcoin, Ethereum, the number of buys it made, the average profit, the cumulative profit, take profit, total profit, the average duration I'm in a trade, the number of wins and losses. So down here, we have a summary of our performance. You see it backtested from June 14th through July 14th. We had 95 trades, average of 3 trades a day. Our starting balance was $1,000. Our final balance was $970. So we lost 2.94%. Unfortunately, the sample strategy, if you run it out of the box, you're not going to make any money. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you can see how this compares to the market itself. If you just bought and held Bitcoin, Solana, Ethereum, it actually was up 4%. So you'd be better off doing nothing, unfortunately, as is the case most of the time when you're trying to time the market. So we need to go back to the drawing board. Let's see if we can find something that will at least give us a positive return versus the market. So Freqtrade provides a repository full of strategies that you can try out. So if you go here to user data, you can see this strategies directory that has a whole bunch of different things that you can try here. And so feel free to sift through this. You see a multi-time frame strategy. You see super trend that we've talked about on the channel, pattern recognition, hour-based strategy, a bunch of different things, diamond strategy, parabolic SAR, and so forth. And then if you look in this folder here, you'll see some other strategies. There's also this does nothing strategy file in here, which is actually kind of nice. I know it does nothing, but this is a great boilerplate to use for your strategy because you can start with this and it has all the extra crap removed that Freqtrade generates. And all you need to do is fill in these 3 methods that I mentioned. And so for the data frame that you get, you just need to define a condition under which to enter long and a condition under which to exit your long position or enter a short position in here, and that's your whole strategy. And then your populate indicators function here, you can fill in this data frame with whatever computations you want. So what we can do now is take one of these strategies, let's say this reinforced smooth scalp strategy here, and we can take this out of the box, and I can click raw here and just copy this person's code and see how that works out for me. And so what I'm going to do here is create a new strategy class here. And so instead of using the command line, I'm just going to say new file, and I'm going to say scalp strategy, just like that. And then I'm going to paste that code in and take a look at this a little bit. And so you see this also extends the iStrategy class here, and I'm just going to call it scalp strategy. So I'm going to rename this to scalp strategy. Just like that, and then you can see the various settings that are set here. So we have a minimal ROI of 2% here, and so what this does is after, if you have a 2% gain at any point while this strategy is running, it's just gonna lock it in. There's a stop loss here of 10%. You can configure and tweak that however you want. This is trading on a 1-minute time frame, which I find isn't very successful. And then if you scroll up here, you can see there's all these different indicators that it's specifying an int parameter, Boolean parameter, and so forth, and it has a range of values instead of just one. And what this does is it allows you to use Freqtrade's hyper optimization functionality. And so what it can do is try a range of values for instance, ADX or the stochastic here, try those values, make a bunch of random choices there and see what it finds. And it uses some machine learning algorithms to do this. And so let's go ahead and look at what this is doing. So we have the populate indicators function. It accepts a data frame. And so I'm going to comment all of this part out so it doesn't do anything. And I'm going to just print the data frame that comes in, the inputs that Freqtrade passes to this function, and you can see it just returns the populated data frame after this function executes. And then you see this populate entry trend function. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to comment this code out except for the return value, and then we can just print it right here. So print the data frame that it receives. And then here in the populate exit trend, we can do the same thing, right? And so I'm going to comment this out, and then I'm going to print the data frame again, right? And so I'll do that. And I'm also going to print a debugging message saying exit trend. And then up here, I'm going to print a message saying entry, and then, or entry signal, let's say. And then I'm going to go up here and just say print populate indicators or populate data, right? You might not use any indicators at all. And so, yeah, so let me see if I can run this scalp strategy out of the box and have it do nothing. So I'm going to do Freqtrade backtesting, and I'm going to do -- strategy, scalp strategy, just like that, and see what it does. So I run this, and look at that. Do you see when it scrolled across, you see a bunch of different data frames that are running. So you can see, let's debug what this is doing at a lower level. So you can see the first thing it does is it just calls the populate data function here. And so you can see it's running through our data, and this is on the 1-minute time frame. So if you look at the strategy here, then it's running on the 1-minute time frame, and we've already downloaded the 1-minute time frame data to our data directory here. And so we have this Bitcoin 1-minute data here. And this is a data frame of just price data, as we've gone over many times on this channel in the past. So June 14th, starting at 6:30 here, and then July 14th is the end of it. So you see it's testing. So you see it's running through 43,000 minutes of data here, and these are the various open, high, low, close, and volume values right here, right? And then after that, you see another populate data and another populate data. So why do you see multiple populate data frames printed out here? It's because we're trading on multiple different currencies. And so there's a data frame here. So this is Bitcoin price, that's Ethereum price, and that is Solana price right there. And then you'll see this run the entry signal function to see if there are any entry signals. And then you'll see it run the exit trend function here to see if there are any exit signals for each one of the currencies here. And you see there is a 0% return right now because we don't have any trading logic built into this function. And so what I can do now is go back to this and look at my scalp strategy, and let's uncomment some of this stuff out. And so that's what my data frame looks like. And so now I'm going to move this data frame part here. I'm going to print the data frame after I populate some of these values. And so let me add some of this stuff back in. So I'm going to let this stuff come back in. So I'm going to do this resampled data frame. Looks like it has a simple moving average, an EMA, stochastic, ADX, money flow index, a bunch of stuff in here. And then we'll print the data frame again. So I'm going to run this back test again. And you should see that data frame filled in with a bunch of different values here. And so this is the data frame in the, if I go to populate data, and so now you see the timestamp has your open, high, low, close. So it fetches the data at the beginning, and then whatever you have programmed in, it'll start populating those indicator values under that pandas data frame, right? And so now you have this pandas data frame that not only has price and volume, but it also has any numerical computations associated with each minute in time or 5 minutes in time or whatever time frame you're trading on. And then whenever you get to your entry signal here, you get another copy of the data frame and you can process these values. So the first function is for populating the values you're going to use. And the second function is for defining your entry signal on that data that's populated. And then you just need to define your exit signal in this function. And so if I scroll down here, you can see how it populates the entry signal here. And so looking at this strategy, if I were to put this code back in here, you can see the way this trading strategy is currently coded. It has a list of conditions that starts off empty, and then it looks at the various Boolean parameters and checks whether or not to use any of these trading conditions. And the reason they do that, these Boolean parameters here that I mentioned, is that this enables that hyper optimization functionality, right? And so you can try enabling or disabling different indicators to see how they affect your strategy. And so when you run this through HyperOpt, what it'll do is try it both ways and see, if you're adding some extra indicator value here that actually worsens your performance or has no impact on your performance. And you can determine whether it's even necessary to use it at all. But you don't actually need all this. What you can actually do is take out these conditions. All you really need ultimately is, I'm going to comment out any conditions for now. You just need this function here. So I'm going to take out this reduce function, right? And then just put some simple condition here. So the simplest strategy, if you don't want to use any of the hyper optimization functionality, is you just need to define a couple of conditions in your data frame. So here's our data frame. It comes into populate entry trend. It has our price data, and it also has these indicator values populated already, right? And so we just need to give it a condition under which to set the enter long column equal to 1. And so if I just define a condition like this, let's say this ADX one, and I define it right here, and I say set the data frame locations where the data frame's ADX, so the ADX of that price data is greater than the value I have defined, so self.byADX.value. So if I go up in the class here, so my class variables, right, you can see my by ADX here is at 32. And so if I go down here, if the data frame's ADX is greater than my buy value that I have defined in my strategy, then I want to set enter long, the enter long column equal to 1, and I can run that. And so if I go back here and actually run the strategy again, you'll see that the ADX is populated here. So if I go to my data frame where it says populate data, we've run our indicators and you see ADX is populated here, right? And then if you go down to the entry trend function, the entry signal function here, you'll see this is the data frame again. You can see the ADX is above 32 at certain periods of time. If it's not above 32, then enter long is not a number. But when it is above 32, you see enter long is 1, and that defines my entry signal and when to buy. So you can see Freqtrade is actually very easy to use. You just need to define some conditions under which to buy in your pandas data frame. You're just defining your strategy in pandas, and that's it. There's not that much logic to know. And then populate exit trend, you just need to define when to exit that long, right? So if I go down here, I can set my exit condition. So I'm going to take out this reduce function for a second here, because that is a combination of all those different conditions that were defined above. I'm just going to define a simple one here. And so I can take this data frame ADX is less than the cell ADX, and I can put it right here. And that's just another simple condition on a single indicator. And I'm setting exit long equal to 1 under this condition, right? And so if I do this, I can run it, and I have an entry signal and an exit signal based on the indicators that are populated in the Populate Indicators function. And when I run this, I actually have a back test that runs. This is actually giving some type of value in return. And so you see I ran this, and this gave me an average profit here, a cumulative profit, and a total profit. And you see this was actually profitable. So 1% return, 2% return here. And so, yeah, this is actually profitable over this 30-day period. However, the market was still up a 4%, so even though it's better than losing, it's still up less than the markets. So as we would expect, some simple indicator here isn't going to be enough to beat the market here. And you can actually look through YouTube, and there's going to be a bunch of people that offer these very simple strategies that say they guarantee a return, and you can just test these so easily, like in those 2 lines of code as you saw, to show that none of them really work or buy you a Lamborghini or anything like that. So what we're going to do here is change a few things about this, try different time frames, time ranges, and configure a few things. So the first thing I'll do here is change the time frame, because personally, I don't think trading on the 1 minute time frame is a very good idea. I know a lot of people on this channel are always asking me, Larry, can you do it on the 1 minute time frame or some really short 1 second thing? And yeah, as I've said many times on this, I don't trade on the 1 minute time frame. I personally don't think it's a great idea, but people, I guess, think it's cool to do more or trade with more high frequency because they think that's how to get some edge. But I think it's actually worse, at least for just a regular person sitting at home. So I think you should at least use multiple hours or the daily time frame. Otherwise, you have all this noise and you're just getting chopped up over and over again. And so what I'm going to at least do is bump this up to the 15-minute time frame, just like that. So how would I test this on the 15-minute time frame? So I'm going to run this again. So I'm going to back test the strategy, reinforced smooth scalp right there. And if I run that, you see it says no data found, so no history. So to get my 15-minute data or my hourly data or whatever time frame you want to trade, you just do Freqtrade download data, but you need to pass a couple of parameters, and these 2 parameters are important ones to know. You want time frame, so that's just the time frame that you're trading on, so 15-minute, 1 hour, whatever. So I'm trading on the 15-minute, and I'm going to get a time range. And so when you download data by default, it's only going to get it over the past 30 days, but I want a range of time. So let's say I want to get data going back to the beginning of the year. I can go 2022-0101 dash 2022, and so it's year, month, day. So year is 2022, month is July, and then the day is the 14th today. And so this will download the data going back to January of 2022, right? And so what I want to do is test the strategy during the current year, 2022, which is a big losing year for Bitcoin and crypto. And so if I look here, I should now have there's my 15-minute data right here. And if I were to backtest my strategy again, I can use these same command line flags here. So I can do Freqtrade backtesting strategy. I can do the time range of this year. And then since my time frame in my strategy class is 15 minutes, this will backtest this for the current year, right? One thing I've found is that these backtests, it seems like they get cached sometimes. And so if you see something that's stuck on a previous time frame or a previous test, you can just delete all the files in this backtest results or data directory and just refresh it to make sure you're getting the latest data. And so I just ran this backtest again. And then so now you can see with the 15-minute time frame for the current year, obviously it's still profitable. We just showed that. So you see the profit there. And then you can see what happened to Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc. over the course of the current year. So it's down 68%, right? And so obviously, if you even have a small percentage profit, you've vastly outperformed the crypto market this year. Pretty much anything you would have done would have outperformed buying and holding crypto. Now, does that mean this is a great strategy? Well, no, because this basically just stayed out of the market a large percent of the time. And so what we can do now to understand these results a little bit better is we can take advantage of the plotting functionality, the visualizing of this strategy, because if I just look at this text, I can't really see what's going on very well. Cool, there's a percentage, but let's go ahead and plot this strategy out, this data frame, to see when our entry and exit signals occurred so we can interpret it a little better and make any adjustments as needed. And so Freqtrade has a plotting functionality here. So if I look here, it says plotting. And so to use the plotting functionality, you need the plotting libraries. It doesn't come with these if you install it manually, but if you use the Docker container, you can go over here to your Docker Compose file, and you see it has the Freqtrade stable image. You actually need the plotting image that has the plotting functionality built in. So I uncomment that line, and then I comment that line. And so now I'm going to bring up the Freqtrade plotting image, right? And so if I run it without that, let me show you real quick what happens if you run it without that. I'm going to do Freqtrade plot data frame. Right, I'm going to run that. It's going to say there's no module named Plotly. So this relies on Plotly being installed as a dependency. But if you use Docker, this is very easy, right? It has the dependencies. So I comment that out. And so I'm going to get my container. I'm going to bring it down. So I'm going to Control C this container that I have running. And then I can pull the new image and I can bring this back up. So I'm going to do Docker Compose up again. And I'm going to create my Docker container. And then whenever I run a Docker PS now, you'll see that I have the Freqtrade develop plot image running just like that. And so I'm ready to go. So I'm going to go back up on this container, Docker exec it Freqtrade bash. I'm going to clear this out and I'm going to do Freqtrade plot data frame just like that. And let's see what this does. It says use strategy to specify the strategy class. So I'm going to do -- strategy the same way I did it with the backtest. And I'm going to pass it my reinforced scalp strategy just like that. So when I do that, it's going to say impossible to load reinforced scalp strategy. That's because I typed the wrong name. The class name is what it uses here. So it's not the file name. So the file name is scalp strategy, but at the top, the class name is reinforced smooth scalp. So it looks to that directory for all the class names and then loads those in. So it's going to find that. Okay. And then it plots the results. So you can see it's actually doing stuff, and it plots them. It says it stored the plot as user data plot, Freqtrade plot, Sol USDT, and so forth. So if you look, there's a plot directory. So now we're using this. Another bit of functionality we're covering. And so I'm just going to go over to my web browser now, and I can just open a file, or I can just drag one of these in. So I can go to Bitcoin here, put it in my browser, and it'll open this nice chart here, and you can see my strategy all plotted with entries and exits. And let me adjust the size there so you can see what I'm doing. And so you see the price, you see Bitcoin is obviously going way down. So what was it, 45K? It dipped under 20K. But this strategy is a scalping strategy, so it avoids this drawdown. It's just trying to trim a little bit of profit off the top if it can. And so a benefit of a scalping strategy is you can make little profits off the top, but the downside is that you can't let winners run, right? You're just trying to hit and run, but if Bitcoin goes from 1,000 to 60,000, then you missed out on all of that and you made like 20 bucks. And one guy's driving the Lambo and you're just eating a Chipotle burrito. So let's try to clean this up a little bit. You see it's showing where you would exit, but there's not many entry signals. So I'm going to hide these exit longs here. And let's just focus on where it entered and where it sold. So long entries are marked by these green up arrows. So you'll see some of those, and you'll also see trade buy. So just because you placed an order to enter a long doesn't mean you get that price, right? The price might be moving up at that exact minute. And so you'll get some fill, and that's your actual buy. So this is this blue circle here, and you can see where it sold at a profit and sold at a loss. So if you look at this chart, you'll see there's actually not that many buys and sells occurring here. So I'm going to hide the price action real quick so you can toggle any of these on and off right here. And so I'm going to just show I'm going to even hide the volume here. And so you can see there's the two losses here. And then you can see There's a little bitty buy right there where it's sold at a profit. There's a very small buy here that's sold at a profit. So there's these little bitty scalps that occur right here. So the majority of the time you won, and then you had a couple small losses where you're stopped out, and you still came up ahead. But scalping, despite what you see on lots of different videos, you're not in the market very much, and you might win just these little percentages, but it's not going to amount to that much over the long term. So a back test is one thing. If I really wanted to, I could tweak all the parameters in this and make it look really good. I could run it through this hyper optimization functionality and have it produce the values that made it look like it had a return of 1,000% and perfectly predict the past. But what really matters is that we can trade this in the future, right? We need to be able to trade this on new data that our algorithm or our strategy has not seen before. And so the nice thing about Freqtrade is it has the ability to do that using the strategy the same way you've coded it for the backtest. You can just run a trade command and give it your same strategy, and it will trade that using your actual crypto exchange. A lot of times in the past, I've shown you how to backtest a strategy and then wrote a separate script that kind of implements it by hand and trades the strategy. But this kind of does it all in one. So once I've written my strategy and defined it and backtested it here, I can run the same strategy using live trading, right? And so to trade this strategy using my Docker container here, right, I already have a local UI that we set up in the last video. So I have this local UI that's running the sample strategy that came with Freqtrade. So I wanted to trade my reinforced smooth scalp strategy. So I'm going to Control C and stop this container real quick. And then I'm going to go back to my code and go to my Docker compose file. And you'll see the command that this Docker container starts when it starts up. And so what it does is run a command called trade, and it runs the trade command. It logs all the trades to a file. It also records all the trades to a relational database. So here's the SQLite file. It also uses whatever config file I have here. So there's my config file that we already set up. And then also it takes the name of a strategy. And so since I passed a sample strategy in the last video, it's trading this sample strategy here. But since we now have this scalp strategy, reinforced smooth scalp, I can just take the name of the strategy and that'll be the one it trades when it starts up. And technically you can set up multiple services here. So if you want to run multiple Docker containers and have them trade different strategies and different databases and different log files, you can do that as well if you want to get more advanced and you want to run a lot of these in parallel. Okay, so I'm giving it the strategy reinforced smooth scalp. And so I can bring this back up and do Docker compose up. And if I scroll back up here, you'll see it says dry run is enabled. So all trades are simulated, right? And you can also see where it picked up my strategy and my static pair list. So it's running a web server. You can see it picked up the static pair list that we defined. So it's only trading Ethereum, Solana, and Bitcoin. And if we wanted to, we could change this over to that dynamic volume pair list so that it'll trade the top 20 coins. And then you can see it loaded the various strategy parameters here, and it's going to start trading my strategy using the data that comes in. And then I can go back to my UI here, and you can see my strategy that's shown here is the reinforced smooth scalp strategy, and it's trading on the 15-minute time frame. And you can see I had these old trades that were open with the old strategy, so it picked those up out of persistence. And so if you look here, it'll say found open trade, and that actually came from the database. And so I don't want to use that old strategy anymore, so I'm going to delete these trades that were already active. So I'm closing those out. So I'm going to exit. I'm just going to exit the market because I don't care right now. And so I'm going to get out of those old trades. So it's forcing a sell there. And now it's just trading my existing currencies here, right? So I've said that I only want to trade 3 currencies here. And if you look at my other bot that's running right now, this is actually trading like many different currencies. I think 15 or 20 of them here. And you can see, yeah, this has had a couple more winning trades, or at least one more since I started recording this video. So that's going pretty well. And then this one is doing a dry run. And so you can monitor this and see how the trade performs over time. And right now this is trading on the 15-minute time frame. So it's going to take a while for me to actually see anything happen. It could be hours before anything happens. It could even be a day if the right thing doesn't happen. And so that's how easy it is to take your back-tested strategy and then start paper trading it using Freqtrade. You just bring it up and have it start this trade command and it's good to go. And this video is running really long. I've been talking like all day today trying to record this video. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it here and then make a follow-up video that's just the deployment and connection to an actual exchange and have it trade some real money. So that's it for this video. Thanks a lot for watching and see you in the next one. Thanks.